Hey there, my name's Curtis Lucas and you're watching Empire Building. So this is a very special day. This is an anniversary of sorts. This is approaching the 1 year anniversary of my Ethereum Genesis validator. And in this episode, I want to talk about how that validator's performed since I've launched it and maintained it throughout this entire year. And in the process of sharing this information with you, I also want to take this opportunity to explain a little bit more about how validators work and dispel some of the misconceptions or myths around Ethereum's proof of stake and these validators. I've listened to other YouTubers who have criticized Ethereum's proof of stake model. And I've observed a lot of the information that has been floating around, even on reputable sources, that are completely wrong about this. There aren't very many other YouTubers that I'm aware of that actually run an Ethereum validator. So I promise what you're going to be able to glean from this episode is information you're just not going to get anywhere else. So like I said, before we get into this, there are a couple of misconceptions or myths that I would like to set the record straight on. And the biggest one that has irritated me to no end is this myth that older validators or validators with a higher balance are rewarded better than other validators. This is completely 100% false. That is not how the reward structure works on the Ethereum proof of stake beacon chain. This is true for other blockchains like Cardano, but not for Ethereum. I have seen this statement made from other YouTubers as well, all over the place on Twitter, and I honestly cannot even blame them because oftentimes they're citing a reputable source. In this case, Coinbase itself. Right off Coinbase's website, on their definition of what is proof of stake, they go into a whole lot here about Ethereum and why they're changing from proof of work to proof of stake. And when they get into the description here, they state the exact details vary by project. But in general, proof of stake blockchains employ a network of validators who contribute or stake their own crypto in exchange for a chance of getting to validate new transaction, update the blockchain, and earn a reward. The network selects a winner based on the amount of crypto each validator has in the pool and the length of time they've had it there, literally rewarding the most invested participants. This is false. And the only caveat they add to this is right at the beginning when they say the exact details vary by project. They're describing Cardano here, but the only mention they make in this whole section is Ethereum. So you can't blame people from believing that this is Ethereum that they're talking about. Now, this is what I'm telling you, but I can prove it. I'm going to show you the evidence. I'm going to show you exactly how these validators work, even the formula that it's based on. The second myth that I have to dispel is this claim that people who run validators, stakers, they don't have to do anything. They just sit back, put their money in there, and it makes them more money, literally making the rich richer. This is, it's not as simple as that. This is not something you just put your money into and walk away from. It is a responsibility. In order to earn that money, you have to maintain that validator. You have to make sure that it is up at all times. You have to make sure that you update it whenever new upgrades or new forks are proposed. So you have to be very much engaged in the Ethereum community and aware of what's happening, those changes that are taking place, and make sure that you maintain that validator. Because if you don't, you lose money. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. This is a validator that was activated at Genesis, same time as mine, on December 1st of 2020. It's been in there since the beginning, and it has never made any money. This is literally how much ETH it has lost since its inception. This balance would have started out at 32. It's now down to 30. It's lost 2 whole ETH since this has all begun. And it's still losing money. So here we have somebody who clearly did not understand what was required of them when they sent the money to that deposit contract. This is clearly somebody who thought it was as simple as sending money and then doing nothing. And they've paid the price because they didn't understand what their responsibilities were. And because no validator can withdraw any of those funds until these smart contracts are enabled on the new proof of stake chain when the merge occurs. That is when the existing Ethereum blockchain merges with the beacon chain where the proof of stake occurs. That's when the proof of stake beacon chain will start validating transactions on the Ethereum blockchain. Sometime after that point, then these funds will become available and this person will finally be able to withdraw them. But until then, they will continue to lose money every single day, or figure out how this technology actually works and do their job. But it seems apparent that validators like this, and this is not the only one. This is the worst performing validator on the beacon chain. But there are many others that are really no different than this. So no, this is not a system that simply rewards the wealthy or the rich. This is something that requires dedication, requires attention, and requires you to do the work. Now, it's not the same as proof of work. It's certainly not consuming all that electricity. That was kind of the point. But it's not something where you just set it and forget it, at least not for the node operators. There are those that might participate in staking pools, but they're not running full nodes. They're not depositing the full balance. For those people, yes, it is one of those set it and forget it. But at the same time, they're also taking on some more risk because they're relying on a third party or a second party to sort of take on that responsibility. If that person or organization does a poor job, then that person has no choice but to accept those consequences as well. So I'm not going to wait to the very, very end of this video to actually get to the part that people want to hear about, and that is how much money these things actually make. We're going to do it right now. And through this, I'm also going to defend the first myth that I was trying to dispel, because I'm going to be comparing the performance of my own validator with some other ones. We can see what those differences are in the broader scheme of things. So this is my validator. As you can see, it's been running mostly 100% since its inception 1 year ago. As you can see, it's been active since Genesis, since the very first block was validated on this beacon chain back on December 1st of last year. There's another block explorer that actually shows the timeline, and if I just refresh this, yeah, you can see it was 364 days and 18 hours ago. So we got another 6 hours to go to actually reach the official anniversary. But I'm not going to be awake at that time, so we're doing it now. I do remember the day that this thing launched. That was an all-nighter for me. I wanted to make sure there weren't going to be any problems once that beacon chain was launched. But this block explorer does show a lot more useful information, generally speaking. So we're going to have a look at this. As you can see, the income over time has been decreasing as more and more validators have entered the beacon chain and began to validate blocks. Also, the number of blocks that I've been able to propose has basically all but disappeared. At the beginning, when there were very, very few validators, I was getting blocks a couple times a week, even twice in one day occasionally. But lately, hardly any at all, because there's so many more validators on the network today. So despite the fact that on the very first day, there were 21,063 validators, and mine was one of them. Despite the fact that mine is among the oldest of all the validators on the network, it doesn't make any difference to the frequency in which that my validator is selected to validate blocks, or the income that the validator earns. These two things have no bearing on the amount of rewards that you can earn, nor how frequently your validator is selected to propose new blocks. As you can see, my validator has a balance of 34.57 ETH. Obviously, it started with a balance of 32, which is the minimum amount that must be deposited in order to activate an Ethereum validator. Now, at today's prices, Ethereum is very close to its all-time highs that it reached not long ago, approaching the $4,900 mark, currently at just over $4,700. So at that price, this validator has earned an income of about $12,205. And it shows here that its APR, or actual percent earning, at 5%, but that's actually an average over the last 30 days. That's why I tend to check different block explorers, because since its inception, it's actually earned about 8%. So at today's prices, we're looking at about little over $12,000 over the course of 1 year. That works out to about $33 a day. As far as earnings are concerned, it may not sound like much, and as a percentage, as we saw, just over 8%. That's certainly better than any you're going to get out of many institutions, and even in DeFi, that's what would be considered not that bad, especially since it's denominated in ETH, which, when you convert that into fiat, on the day that the Beacon chain was launched on December 1st of 2020, Ethereum was trading at or closed that day at $586 US. So at that time, 32 ETH required to deposit into that contract to activate a validator would have run you $18,752. Today, with all of these earnings included, this validator is now worth $163,885. That's an overall return in fiat US dollars of 774%. Not bad for 1 year's return. And like I said, I don't think we're near done yet. Ethereum is still just getting started. In my opinion, I believe that there's no reason why, assuming Ethereum is successful in transitioning to proof of stake and launching chain sharding after the merge, and gas fees are finally brought under control. Once that's all done, the sky's the limit. And my expectation, and again, not investment advice by any means, but I believe that 32 ETH will certainly reach a value of $1 million. And when that happens, staking rewards aren't going to be some measly $33 a day. It's going to be enough to actually live off of. And I don't think it's even going to stop there. For those of you wondering, an Ethereum validator, for it to reach an overall value of $1 million, that would require that each Ethereum coin be valued at approximately $30,000 US. So nearly a 10x from here. Now, the timeline for that to occur, I would expect, is more than reasonable within the time it takes them to finally reach Ethereum's full form. Now, history hasn't been kind to those kind of predictions, especially in Ethereum. It does tend to take longer than anyone thinks, because what they're trying to do is fundamentally very hard. It's never been done before. So it does tend to take a little bit more time. People have to realize that what we're building here, what they're trying to accomplish, is extremely difficult. This is like equivalent to rebuilding an engine on an airplane while it's in flight, or for that matter, rebuilding the whole airplane. And in fact, that was the approach that they were previously attempting to do until they realized, nah, don't bother trying to rebuild the airplane while it's flying. Just build a new airplane on the ground. And when that airplane is ready, it takes off and engulfs the existing chain or the existing airplane, for that analogy. It's going to swallow it whole and become a part of the much larger Ethereum 2.0. Things are going to get very, very interesting in this coming year. And I do think Ethereum is going to surprise. There'll be a lot of shock and awe. But there'll be plenty of time to talk about all that stuff. We'll get into a lot more of that things as time goes on. But for now, let's just get back to the topic of this video. You may notice that there's been a slight drop off here recently in the income from the validator. And that's because of the latest hard fork that Ethereum went through. It changed the mechanism that governs those rewards. And it's dropped quite substantially. Now, this is actually supposed to be offset because now we'll have a look at the #1 performing validator on the network, which is this one here, which has a balance slightly larger than mine, actually just about 0.2 ETH. So it's earned about 11% more Ethereum than my validator has. But when we have a look at its history here, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly one of the reasons why. And there's this massive spike here that occurred. And this is the result of that hard fork I just mentioned. When they altered the way in which those rewards are paid out, another feature that was included was something called sync committees. And so every 72 hours, a bunch of validators are randomly selected to form part of a sync committee. And it requires a little bit more computational power from those participants, which is why it cycles through. My validator has yet to be selected to become part of one of these committees. At some point it will, and it will also see a boost in income like that. It's substantial. Again, it's pretty insane how much difference that makes. And in fact, over the course of that 72 hours, the income just so happens to be approximately 0.2 ETH. So as soon as that happens to a validator like mine, then that gap, it's gone. The performance of these validators are very competitive. It's very comparable. This anomaly that was just introduced not long ago has sort of skewed some of these results now. But soon enough, my validator will get selected. It's just random. I'm just apparently not as lucky as some others. Somebody's got to get picked. That's the point. But that's why the rewards for everybody else, including this one, following that boost in income, theirs also dropped off, just like everybody else. And as you can see, they've also been selected for a couple more block proposals than I have. But yes, it's the same age, also a Genesis validator. They've actually proposed 10 additional blocks compared to mine. But it is completely random. As time goes on, the distance between these validators will start to shrink. The distribution will start to even out. But again, what truly governs the profitability of any of these validators is uptime. If for whatever reason your validator goes down, you'll lose money. And based on this performance of this validator, it's had 100% uptime. It has missed absolutely, it's missed 11 attestations. By comparison, my own validator has missed 239 attestations. Not that big of a deal. That you can see was during the summer months, we've had a whole lot of heat that came around. We had several brownouts. So every time that happened, my validator went down and began to lose a little bit of money. It's not much, but it does, I guess, add up over the long term. But mainly, yeah, it's those differences have become less and less significant. The point here is the way that Ethereum validators are paid is based on the effective balance. And the effective balance cannot be more than 32 ETH. That is the maximum effective balance. You can have less than that, the effective balance, if, for example, you're losing money like our friend here. Their effective balance is roughly 30 ETH because they've lost 2. They're below the 32 ETH threshold. If for some reason this person never withdraws any of this money and allows it to run like this, eventually they'll reach that half of the effective balance, so 16 ETH. That's the most you can lose. At that point, your validator is kicked out of the off the beacon chain, and that's it. The ETH will have to be collected or remain there. Really, the point is that once your effective balance reaches 16 ETH or lower, you can no longer operate that validator. And of course, I haven't even mentioned slashings. There's been a lot of those that have happened on the network as well. And that's another way that you can lose a lot of money. But I mentioned the rewards and penalties. There is an actual formula. And as you can see, there's nothing in this formula that references the age of a validator or the overall balance, only the effective balance. There's also this active balance shown in the denominator here, which is interesting because that would actually suggest that validators with an excess of ETH in their validators will actually underperform. But I'm not entirely clear on this thing, on this particular line item, because it is a summation here. But the point is, you can look at the real world examples and see for yourself exactly how these things perform. If you ever want to do that, you can do so by simply going into the validator leaderboard, or anything for that matter, and see how these things perform. I've done that, and I've compared certain validators that are of even newer validators, ones that are far more recent than mine, that actually earn more per attestation or per day, which is direct evidence that the age, having an older validator, does not guarantee that you're going to make any more money. So I do feel like this is kind of running on a little bit long, certainly longer than I expected to go, but there's definitely a whole lot more that I haven't touched on. I'd like to talk about this a little bit more and help people understand what this is, and maybe we'll do it again in another year and see how see what's changed. Because what is interesting, and this is one thing I'm going to talk about in a separate video, but a lot of people are fearful that once this period, this lockdown or lockup period that validators are subjected to right now, that we cannot withdraw any of that ETH, whether we wanted to or not until they activate smart contracts on the new beacon chain after the merge occurs. And there's this fear that all these validators are simply going to withdraw all their coins and dump them and take profits. I can say with certainty that I'm certainly not going to be one of them. There's a sense of pride that I have in owning a Genesis validator, and that's something I'm not interested in ever giving up. And the reality here is that the mechanism for withdrawing Ethereum from a validator is not as simple as everybody simply withdrawing. Just like when the beacon chain launched, there's only so many validators that can exit at once. In fact, there's only 4 validators that can exit per epoch. An epoch on the beacon chain lasts for about 6.5 minutes. So that means that only that works out to 884 validators that can exit per day. It takes a considerable amount of time for any substantial amount of contributors to withdraw. And the process of them withdrawing, as soon as that happens, the rewards for those who stay behind begin to go up, which is going to incentivize more to stay behind. This is part of the nature of these open and competitive systems. It's all about incentives and disincentives. And the fact that there's this delay or this dampening effect of validators that wish to exit, there's just not going to be this massive wave of selling pressure that everybody fears. Now, having said that, that does mean that those like myself will be incentivized to withdraw anything above their effective balance. But that's certainly not enough for anyone to be afraid of. I'll show you why. You can see from these charts here that currently the average balance of an Ethereum validator is 33.33. So there's an additional 1.33 ETH per validator. And there are currently roughly 263,000 validators in total. So that would work out to a total of 350,000 ETH. Sounds like an awful lot. However, when you compare that to how much ETH has been burned just since EIP 1559 was launched, that's over 1 million already. So we've literally burned 3 times the amount of ETH that has already been paid out to validators over a whole year. And we've only been burning ETH for less than half a year. So you can see how deflationary Ethereum is about to become once mining is done away with. People have a whole lot less to fear from validators selling than they do from miners selling. And I think it's more likely that a staker is a long-term investor. And they're more likely to restake any ETH that they pull out than they are to sell it, in my opinion. But it remains to be seen. We'll be able to see for ourselves exactly how much of that turns into selling pressure or not. But you can see there's just not enough volume for anyone to really be concerned about. So I'll leave it at that for this one. Like I said, there's plenty more that we'll get into as time goes on. But I thought that would be a educational and insightful look into what staking is like on Ethereum, what's involved in it, some of the little subtle nuances about how it works, and like I said, dispelling some of these myths. And there's more of that, so I think that it's important that I get into some of those issues and just try to spread the word. Ethereum is a game changer. It changed just as much about this as Bitcoin did, just in a very different way. The reason why Ethereum has been so wildly successful is because it chose not to compete with Bitcoin. It chose to solve an entirely different problem and propose solutions that just didn't exist before. And that is why it's going to be so difficult for it to be replaced. The only way anything else is going to be able to replace it is if it fails on its own merits, i.e. fails to make the transition to proof of stake, or if another platform finds a way to sufficiently distinguish itself from Ethereum, in which case it also will not be competing with it. It would be something else entirely, whatever that might be. But the general purpose blockchain for smart contracts is fully occupied by Ethereum. It is literally larger than the next 10 of its competitors combined. But I've gone on long enough on this. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to get back to some more Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining videos next. I do think we are at a critical point right now, and we'll have to see how things play out. But with Ethereum literally approaching all-time highs yet again, and Bitcoin is, last I checked, on the verge of breaking out. But it's possible it still might need just a little bit more time. We'll see what happens. That's all for this one. Now let's get back to empire building.